Hello, I am Dr. Phil Busey. I will present for identification set 6 containing 12 species of Florida native plants. Species are listed alphabetically by their scientific names, but I need to make some clarifications. For one that is not what it says it is, sawgrass, Cladium jamaicense, is a sedge and not a grass. It's in the Cyperaceae family, not in the Poaceae family. 2 were transferred. Senna mexicana had at one time been in the genus Cassia. Another transfer is Vachellia choriophylla, cinnecord, which had previously been in the genus Acacia, but it too was transferred. And Typha latifolia, broadleaf cattail, is a wealth of confusion because it's very close to another species that grows in the same areas, and they're very hard to identify. First species is the third of our mangroves, Avicennia germinans, black mangrove, and as you might expect, this also has opposite leaves as do the other 2 mangroves that we've studied. But this is the only one that has pneumatophores, which would be supposedly breathing tubes that come up from the ground and up from the water. Another feature of this plant, the black mangrove, that should be easy to remember, is that it is white. It is the only one with very grayish or whitish undersides of leaves. It's a salt-excluding species, and you would know this from the salty taste of the underside of the leaves. That's salt. You can see the leaves of this one are also opposite as the other 2 mangrove species. However, this is the only one with pneumatophores. Byrsonima lucida, locustberry, is a very attractive small tree or really shrub. When it's in flower, which is a good part of the time, it has flowers that emerge whitish or pinkish, and they gradually transition to red or yellow. I tend to take a lot of pictures of this plant when I see it because it's so interesting. And the leaves are spatulate or oblanceolate, only about 1.5 inches long. And there is a close-up of the flowers. And yet another with a little bit more red and orange and berry on the left. Locustberry. Very attractive little plant. It has opposite leaves. And there are the fruit. Cladium jamaicense, sawgrass, which is a sedge, not a grass, is perhaps the most important or one of the most important plants in South Florida for protection of our water supply. It has linear leaves that are sharply edged and make it very difficult to pass through areas dominated by sawgrass. Gymnanthes lucida, crabwood, I like because of its compact, roundish form. It forms a small to medium-sized tree. The leaves are lustrous on the upper surface. And the way I tell this species is that the young buds look imbricate, like little pine cones, and the leaf margins are gently crenate on the tips. Here's a close-up that shows you the leaf margins and that cone-like bud. Ilex cassini dahoon holly is not one that's mentioned specifically in Gil Nelson's book, but it's probably the best of the ilex or holly species for South Florida. It has these red berries, or certainly the female plants do. It's dioecious, so if you're purchasing this, you want to get a pretty good number of female plants and some males. As with many other holly species, there may be small teeth on the edges of the leaf. And here's a close-up of the more extreme form, although not every leaf and not every plant is going to have teeth on the leaves. Another of my favorite Florida native plants is the Myrcianthes fragrans, or Simpson's stopper. It has several features of interest. The exfoliating bark can be reddish or yellow, as with other members of the Myrtaceae of the myrtle family. The flowers are white and delicate looking. The fruit range from yellow to orange and mature as red, and they are attractive. And the fruit is reportedly edible. What interests me most about Myrcianthes fragrans is the strong odor of the crushed leaves. Humans' experience of odors and our vocabulary is somewhat underdeveloped. People have described this odor of Myrcianthes fragrans as nutmeggy or as piney or citrusy. To me, it's more of a camphor smell with a musty hint of cedar. It's the smell of old clothes that have been sitting in a cedar box for many years. Look at the punctate dots. They're recognizable when illuminated with a horizontal lighting, such as low angle of the sun, or also you can hold a leaf up to the sky and see these. I'm going to digitally enhance those dots so that they're easier to see. And there they are, and they contain an aromatic oil that, like most natural chemicals, is probably a mixture of several chemicals. Besides Simpson's stopper in the genus Myrcianthes, there are 4 other stoppers that are in the genus Eugenia that are native to Florida. The specimen left of Senna is an example growing in a natural area. I was not planning to go into detail on these because they are complex, but you should be aware that they're out there. They all have opposite leaves, as does Myrcianthes fragrans and other species in the family Myrtaceae, the myrtle family. The 4 native Eugenia stoppers in Florida include one I like a lot on the lower left, the white stopper, Eugenia axillaris, that has a skunky smell, and it can give a real wild fragrance to a native plant hammock. It has noticeable veins, lateral veins, on the upper leaf surfaces, unlike Eugenia rhombia red stopper on the lower right. Less common in the upper right is Eugenia confusa redberry stopper with very lustrous leaves. And in the upper left is Eugenia fetida Spanish stopper, which has very rounded leaf tips. Another species is Psychotria ligustrifolia. It's one of 3 Psychotrias native to Florida. The Bahama wild coffee has a shiny leaf, as does Psychotria nervosa, which we've already seen. However, it does not have deeply impressed veins, lateral veins, as does Psychotria nervosa. And as with Psychotria nervosa or wild coffee, the berries are red and the leaves are opposite, as shown here. Senna mexicana, variety Chapmanii, Chapman's wild sensitive plant, is a legume. It's a member of the Fabaceae, and it has a pinnately compound leaf. It has an even arrangement of the leaflets. There's no terminal leaflets, so it's considered even pinnate. And the leaflet shape is falcate, or somewhat sickle-shaped and pointed. The flower obviously is yellow. The flower of Senna mexicana, variety Chapmanii, has 5 petals. They are approximately similar in size and shape, but not the same. So that would be considered bilaterally symmetrical or somewhat zygomorphic. Not highly zygomorphic as the Sophora tomentosa necklace pod that we saw in an earlier session, which has more of a pea-shaped flower, but this one is somewhat asymmetrical. Here we can get more familiar with the structure of this group of the pea family, the Cisalpinoid group, or subfamily of Fabaceae. Each of the 5 petals of this type of flower it has a name. There's one on the top that is the median, which is sometimes called the standard. There are 2 upper laterals that are called wings, and there are 2 lower laterals that, if this was in the pea group, it would be considered a fused pair, the keel petals. As with other members of the pea family, there is an elongate pod for a fruit, and it is often somewhat flattened and curved on Senna mexicana, and that's called a legume. Swietenia mahogani, West Indian mahogany, is a very common street tree in South Florida, and it's also used in parking areas such as this Miami-Dade College Kendall campus parking lot. It's a very strong tree with a stout trunk. Mahoganies are responsible for the demise of many sidewalks in South Florida because the areas where they are planted are too narrow for a tree of this size. The leaves of West Indian mahogany are even pinnate, which means that there is no terminal leaflet, and here you can count the 5 pairs of leaflets. Each leaflet is somewhat asymmetrical. We would call this falcate, meaning sickle-shaped. The fruits of West Indian mahogany, Swietenia mahogany, are larger than a person's fist, and they're hard and heavy, so they do not endear themselves to owners of small sports cars or convertibles. They can fall with quite a bit of force, and they get run over by cars, so you can see a debris field here of Swietenia mahogany fruits. Pay attention to the spelling of the specific epithet, mahogany. The second A precedes the O, whereas with the common name West Indian mahogany, the second A comes after the O. Taxodium distichum bald cypress and another cypress species that is also common in Florida occur in places such as the Big Cypress National Preserve and is often used in swale areas and parking lots in shopping centers. It is a gymnosperm. It is not a flowering plant. Taxodium distichum leaves are flat and they are attached to a greenish stem tissue, making it look like they are pinnately compound, when in fact they are not. Another species of Taxodium has leaves that are very short and awl-shaped, and they are closely oppressed, which gives them a very different kind of look. Taxodium distichum forms knees that come up from the ground, analogous perhaps to the nematophores of black mangrove. However, the function is unknown. But cypress knees in swales and parking lots are an interesting maintenance challenge for people that are trying to take care of the area. And they're also a trip hazard. There's another example. You can even see from this casual photograph that this is the Taxodium distichum. Typha latifolia, broadleaf cattail, is a species that I am not very secure in my knowledge, because there is another Typha species that's common in the same areas. And they differ according to the width of the leaf, the separateness or the contiguity of the male and female parts of the inflorescence, as well as the color of the inflorescence. So this identification as such may not be correct. There's an example of the broad leaves of this monocot species, Typha latifolia, or other species. And here, probably in the hole in the donut area in Everglades National Park, is an example of the other species, maybe Typha domingensis, a southern cattail, I think, because you can see that the male and female parts of the inflorescence are separated by a short distance. The female reproductive parts create a fluff that children sometimes play with to pull off the fuzz and blow it in the wind. Our last species in the set is Vachellia choriophylla, cinnecord. Here it is growing in a tangle in Fairchild Tropical Garden lowland area, and you really can't see or find your way through it. Nice thing about this, though, and here's a specimen at Miami-Dade College Kendall Campus Landscape Technology Nursery, is it has no spines. It has a bipinnate compound leaf, as does its sister, which is the sweet acacia, the Vachellia farnesiana. It has larger leaflets, and they're very roundish. Their yellow puffball type inflorescence is very similar, if not indistinguishable. But the main things to remember about this are both the lack of spines as well as the lustrous appearance of the upper leaf surface. And there shows again the bipinnate compound leaves. the inflorescence, and finally we'll close with Vachellia choriophylla. Thank you for listening.